Now, KRAP is a suffix used here in Thailand to convey respect, and also on its own as a phrase showing respectful agreement. So when the Ajahn is talking to me, I would hold my hands in Anjali and say KRAP, KRAP, KRAP. It is also means, when they say KRAP, it means bow. So when we're bowing in the temple, often the leader of the chanting will say KRAP and we will bow. Now, of course, it has an entirely different meaning where I come from. Almost the opposite, I suppose. One would say he is talking crap, and this would be quite a derogatory comment. It isn't really a swear word, although the slang word, when I look this up just to be really sure, it's often referring to shit. So in that respect, it isn't the most polite word to use. So, hello friends, and welcome. Welcome to a very damp and humid kuti in an extremely wet and rainy forest. The rain has stopped for a few moments. I don't know whether you can see, probably not, but my walls are hung with the bits of cloth that I have, which aren't many. Our wardrobe is very limited, as you know, which are still dripping wet after a day, or if not 24 hours now, because the humidity is so humid. When we get a few sunny hours, it's great. You can dry everything out very quickly. Today I wanted to talk about right speech in response to a question which I will read in a minute, because it's in the context of all inclusivity when it comes to right speech. So in the context of people whom are hard of hearing or maybe can't speak, how do they apply right speech, as in right speech in the Noble Eightfold Path? I'd really like to complain and complain and explain that even though the Vassa, the 3-month period that us monks don't ever go anywhere, hasn't begun. Our lockdown, this monastic monk lockdown, hasn't started yet. It's a couple of weeks off. No, a week off now. A week and a day tomorrow it begins. And already dukkha, suffering, is setting in. Of course, the point being, it's the reason we stay in one place, because it's the monsoon season, and to be walking around on tudong, that is a wandering ascetics practice, as I'm usually doing, is impractical at this time of year. And the Buddha was from this part of the world, so of course recognised that and ensures that his monks are all locked up for 3 months. So it's monk lockdown starting soon. I'm not going to complain, because that would not be right speech, in the sense it's not useful to you. It's not useful to me, other than, isn't it nice just to get things off your chest from time to time? So forgive me if occasionally I do go, "Wah, I can't stand it, I can't get anything dry." I haven't been dry for now 48 hours. My feet are painful where they're rotting, and we still have to walk a mile in the morning despite all of this. But I'm not really complaining. As you can see, I'm smiling, and I can laugh. Maybe in 90 days time, or let's say 97, 98 days time, I might not be smiling so much. We'll see. But with your support and your kind comments, I'm sure I'll be encouraged to stick this out. This is not like one of those programs that I've seen where people go and live in the jungle who aren't used to such things, and then because they're celebrities want to be got out of this situation, because I think you must appreciate that is quite artificial. I mean, it's a long time ago since I saw such a program, but when I saw it, it was quite artificial. Bring any of those people here for a couple of days, they'd be gone for sure. I mean, just the sight of these snakes is going to get you, if nothing else. Even if you're, I mean, I really am not scared of snakes, but you do know that these things can kill you, and there are the wetter it gets, the more there are, along with the other animals and creatures. But this is my choice. I'm not here suffering because I'm trapped or unable to get myself out of here, so to speak. It's part of my practice to see how my mind deals with external, like you have in lay life, the vicissitudes of life, but of a different nature. Over my 40 odd years of lay life, I got used to the vicissitudes of life, but not these kinds of changes. These kinds of changes I knew. So it's not being used to them, experiencing them, and dealing with them. Face on, not running away, not saying, get me out of here. Staying with it and accepting things as they are. A little discomfort, a little pain. Dukkha. It's the nature of all things. Everything's impermanent. Anicca. And when we know that one, it helps with dukkha, because dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, suffering, is also impermanent. In a few months' time, it'll be the height of the season here in Thailand, and the sun will be shining, the beach will be beautiful. Well, the beach is still beautiful now, but everything will be dry and it'll all be wonderful. So this is the nature of all things, and we develop through this practice wisdom. How do we develop this wisdom? Through the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path. Sila, moral virtue; samadhi, meditation; and panya is wisdom. Sila makes up 4 parts of this Noble Eightfold Path. The first is right intention, right intention, right action, right speech. Sorry, the damp is getting to me. Right view, okay, this is wisdom. Right view, right intention, yes, and this is where right speech is so very important. It comes before action, yes. Right speech, number 3. Right view, right speech, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, number 4. Right view is wisdom. Okay, so wisdom comes under the panya part of sila, samadhi, panya. The next 4 are sila. So right view, and then right intention, right speech, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood. Followed by right effort, right mindfulness, right samadhi. Let me just run through all 8 quickly, check I've got this right, because my damp brain, which is also subject a little bit to a bit of a vitamin B12 deficiency, which I have remedied today. The vitamin B12 tablets have arrived. I'm sure that's why I'm getting a little forgetful. It's a thing that comes with age. Anyway, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right meditation. There is 8. Okay, so I didn't miss any out. The last 3, effort, mindfulness, meditation, are samadhi, meditation, but those middle 4 are sila, moral virtue, which begin with the right intention. The other 3 are intention based. So right speech, right action, and right livelihood occasionally we make mistakes. We'll accidentally, for instance, tread on an insect and the insect dies. You have killed the insect, but without intention. So although that is action, it is neutrally, karmically neutral. It won't send you to be born into the hell realms because you did not intend to kill this insect rather. Could be any insect here. So today I want to talk about right speech, and what goes along with this is intention, because like with actions and our livelihood, it's intention based. The very difficult thing, and this is why it's probably so high up in the aspects for us to concentrate on, is that we can very easily say things unintentionally because it's slipped out. But in effect, the intention is still there because it's coming from a place of feeling, of maybe wrong view or misunderstanding. Yes, but often you'll say something and it's true and you mean it, but you'll regret saying it. And this is the problem we can have and the trouble we can get into, actually, not just from a karmic point of view. Excuse me 1 second, I need to just check the camera's on. Yes, we are rolling. I didn't want to speak for another 40 minutes or so. Yes, we're all going. I didn't want to speak for another 40 minutes or so. Not be recording, and I didn't check the time. You see, when you get to my age and you live on a very strange diet like here, then you get this vitamin B12 deficiency, and in India every day I took a vitamin B12 tablet. I haven't been doing that here because it's seemingly a good lot of food and a lot of things, but there is no vitamin B12 in the food I'm eating, because I don't eat meat. Well, it's a vegetarian monastery anyway, so there isn't any, or eggs, or they don't really have cheese here. You see, in England and in other countries, us monks, for one of our allowables in the afternoon, we're allowed cheese. Now, of course, the best, apart from meat, the best source of vitamin B12 is cheese. Or milk, but they don't really have milk here. They have soy milk, which has it added, but it's not the same kind of B12 that our bodies need to make our brains work, basically, our nervous system. It's all to do with your nervous system. So, moving on with my rotten brain, and if I read the question that was sent in, then I can talk about what I want to talk about is how we deal with this intention. I briefly touched upon it recently in a talk, and I have previously talked about right speech, I'm sure, when I was talking mainly about idle speech, sampapalapa, which I'll go into again in a minute, briefly. But today I want to talk about how we control and make sure, or try and put some tools, useful things in place to ensure we say the right thing at the right time and don't offend people, but also keep this whole right speech thing within the precepts, not only of not lying, well, yes, with that, of not lying, keeping your speech truthful. Because you have the third point in this Noble Eightfold Path is right speech. Also in the fourth part of the 5 precepts, the 5 precepts are no killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, or lying, or taking of intoxicants. In the precepts, the 4th precept of not lying, or refraining from it also can be expanded in some places. They'll expand it from refraining from lying or harmful speech, but it specifically is refraining from lying. This is the precept. So it is expanded upon in the Noble Eightfold Path. And I will explain how it's expanded upon in the Noble Eightfold Path, because it's refraining from lying, divisive speech, abusive speech, and idle chit-chat, and that is sampapalapa. So if I sit here just idly chatting about the weather, which I have done so far, and complaining about all of my old man conditions, this is more or less sampapalapa, although I wouldn't allow myself to do if I didn't think it was a little bit interesting, because it's not every day you get to speak to some old guy who's sitting in a humid hut in the middle of the jungle for months on end. I would say tearing my hair out, but there's none to tear out. They make you even get rid of that. But it's all good fun, isn't it? And this is the point. The Buddha wanted us to be happy, and this is the training to become content with our lives, and it's contentment that is the source of happiness. Happiness is just a symptom of contentment, as is sadness a symptom of discontentment. Okay, let me read this subscriber's question. Can you make a talk on right speech? I would be grateful if you could keep in mind that some people are non-verbal, have a speech impediment, I'm sorry, I don't know this word, aphasia, or maybe deaf. I am finding the term right speech a bit confusing. Apologies for not knowing the word aphasia. Maybe I should have looked it up, but I don't plan these speeches. I just hope they're right. But it's a speech condition. So I think it's a very good point. When we consider the Noble Eightfold Path is our practice, if you can't hear or you cannot speak, then one could consider that as being at a disadvantage. Now, what I'll say is that, and I appreciate at the end you're saying you're finding it a bit confusing. Hopefully the overall points I'm making in today's talk will explain away your confusion. But specifically dealing with people whom have difficulty in speaking or hearing for one reason or another, to some extent, in terms of the Noble Eightfold Path and the overall practice of Buddhism, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, this practice, it has its advantages. Now, I'm not saying that disrespectfully to people whom are deaf or people who can't speak, but of course most of our practice is about refraining from. So it's refraining from harmful speech, refraining from divisive speech, lying, abusive speech. And if you cannot speak, then it's considerably easier to refrain from those things. They're not going to slip out, those mistakes that we all make. Now, I live here with just three other monks. The other one has turned up for this monk lockdown. And the Samanera, no one can speak English, and most of the lay people, apart from the Kapia who helps me out, they don't speak English, and we don't speak generally anyway. There's a pretty much a system of noble silence, as there is in most monasteries. Noble silence doesn't mean we vows of silence. In fact, the Buddha prohibited those because it's impractical and unfair on other people for you to say, I'm just not speaking. It's unhelpful, it's not useful in a community. But we only speak when it is necessary to do so about important things. But of course I can't speak to anyone at all. I don't speak Thai and they don't speak English. So I cannot listen, I cannot speak. However, much of our communication is not just in words, speaking words, or sounds, hearing sounds. In fact, most of our communication is in associated body language. And this is where it's very hard to hide intention. Because sometimes someone might be saying the right things to you, or you might be saying the right things to them. But if the good intention isn't behind those words, they'll know, as you will know. If there's a crash in a minute, what it is, I've realised now what happens is all of the rain with these trees, it builds up in the limbs of the trees, they get heavier and heavier, break off, crash down. Another life-threatening aspect of forest jungle life. This is a metal roof and it's substantial, I think, but it makes a big noise. Out there, you've just got to hope for the best. No hard hats or steel toe caps here, that's for sure. And when I stub my toe, I say crap, and I think, oh, you shouldn't be saying things like that. But here, I think it's okay. People think, well, crap. So I do use this little trick, you see. I use this to be able to say my expletives, which only go as far as crap. I must say, I say that word quite a lot at the moment. I could be just using the toilet and a snake appears looking at me. I'll say, oh, crap. I don't mean it, Mr. Snake. You're a lovely fellow. I mean you no harm. Metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, all of that. And I hope he sees I mean no harm and he slides away. And that's I wouldn't be here now if they didn't. So you know this works, metta and karuna. So it does apply whether you have the situation of difficulty in speech. Let me think how you're really trying to get me to. So all of the aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path do apply to everyone. I think maybe your understanding is that we have to go around saying nice things, and that's what we mean by right speech. But no, that's not what we mean by right speech. It is refraining from lying, divisive speech, abusive speech, or idle chitter-chatter. The Pali word for idle chitter-chatter, my waffling on basically, especially on these Monday talks, when I haven't spoken for 2 days. Friday, Saturday. Yes, 2 days. Of course, I waffle on a lot of sampapalapa, but I love that word. And I say it all day long because it sounds, there's a word, onomatopoeic, I think. It sounds like it is a lot of sampapalapa. By the way, sampapalapa Bhante, monk, who I rudely call him sampapalapa monk, not to his face, behind his back, but that's not being deceitful, it's because I couldn't really explain it. And he might not even understand my pronunciation of the word anyway, but I think of him as that because he talks a lot. He might have one of these conditions, actually, it's fair to say. In another monastery I stayed at, there was a monk who'd been there for many years, and a very, very, he's a senior Ajahn, but he has Tourette's syndrome, which is continuous all day long. This Tourette syndrome is a condition where you shout out expletives, it's in Thai, so I don't know what he's saying, or any shouting out randomly words. Apologies if that's incorrect, it's not a good explanation. It's probably a wide-ranging condition, but I'm just trying to get to the point. Anyway, he's been there for many years and he's a wonderful monk, but when he's in the temple chanting, it all goes away. He's all quiet and chanting, it's no problem. It's just during the day, it's blah blah blah, something comes out. But it's not intentional. You see, this is the point. It's all of these aspects of sila are about being based on good intention or bad intention. So this is where we're coming from on that. So refraining from right speech just means that in the Noble Eightfold Path, and in terms of the precepts, it's specifically no lying, but it is specifically that. You don't have to expand it to, you can take the whole precepts, put them all together and call it one precept, do no harm. That covers to yourself or any other living beings. Do no harm to yourself or any other living beings. Covers no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and no taking of intoxicants. That's all 5 precepts in one. Do no harm to yourself or any other living beings. So you don't need to take the 4th precept and add do no harm onto it. They are all about doing no harm. So the 4th precept is specifically no lying. If you lie, you're breaking that 4th precept. If your wife says, does my bottom look fat in this? If it does, you say, yes it does, madam, it looks fat. You don't have to say, yes it does, madam, it looks fat. You just say, well, you don't have to lie. You can say, it's your bottom, it's why I love you, or some comment. You can avoid, you can evade, you can even to some extent with right intention, to do no harm. They call it lying by omission, but it's not lying, is it? But if you're not saying something that's truthful because it would only do harm, then that isn't lying. So that isn't breaking the 4th precept. I hope that's clear. I welcome your questions and comments on that if it's not. And why do I keep looking? Because the phone is there, I'm looking down at it all the time. So I'm going to put it away. But as I've got the, actually, just check I've got this question. It's going to go away now because I do look at it otherwise. I've actually got the sutta references written down here as to where all of this stuff is coming from, because it's not me coming up with all of this stuff I talk about. Someone in the comments said that's a quote from Einstein, one of my short quotes that I mainly address to my Indian friends, because I know at that time of day they like to get these short quotes when they're on the bus or just having their lunch. So I do the same every day. But they said that quote's from Einstein, and it is of course from Einstein. Where he got it from, I don't know, maybe the Buddha. But we all get this stuff, these teachings, from somewhere else. Now in our case, as Buddhists, our teacher is the Buddha. And we are only, as monks, the Sangha is just conveying those teachings of the Buddha. So in the Samyutta Nikaya 45.8 it is quoted that 5 things you should think about before you speak. 5 things you should think about before you speak. What are these 5 things, bhikkhus? These 5 things are that your speech should be timely. So before you want to say something to someone, now this usually we apply as monks, monastics, to admonishment. Now if we are, it applies both ways. If we're going to admonish someone, now I wouldn't be admonishing anyone because I'm the most junior. But my teachers, if they were going to admonish me, would have read and learnt the Samyutta Nikaya number 45.8 and know how one should treat speech in terms of these 5 conditions that you should apply before speaking. So timely would mean certainly not at arms round time, on the way, or when we just get back before the meal. Because if you wanted to admonish a fellow monk or someone when they haven't eaten for 24 hours and have just walked in the rain with their sore feet on stony ground, probably that's not the time to tell them off. After the meal, after the washing up the bowls, when the sun's come out and it's an appropriate moment and everyone's relaxed, then maybe. Timely. Now in your lives it's the same. Not when you're rushing around in the morning, looking for the car keys, getting the kids into the car to take them to school, finding your file you've lost from work last night. This is not the time perhaps to address an awkward situation with your partner. Wait until the evening. And we know this, we do this. Wait until the evening, you're having some dinner, a bottle of wine. You shouldn't be having a bottle of the wine, it's breaking the fifth precept, but you know what I mean. This is timely when you would address a difficult situation or a conversation. So the first thing you consider is timely, and these are done in a logical order. Secondly, whatever you have to say should be truthful. So let's just run through them quickly first. Before you speak, you should always ensure that it is timely, it is truthful, it is kind, it is helpful, and I use the word experiential. So firstly, truthful. You need to always have the right facts behind what you're going to talk about. Kind, you want to speak in a kindly manner. And this is where I'm going to come on to speaking with tone, how we speak. Helpful or useful, as in maybe someone's done something wrong, but they're never going to be in that situation again. Maybe they were doing you a favour, for instance. Maybe you were, I don't know, just use a silly example. You were changing a particular kind of light bulb and they helped you, they did it wrong, but you were never going to change that kind of light bulb again, nor were they. There's no point bothering going there, is there? Really, it's not helpful for them to know that they did it wrong. It's not a great example, but I think you know where I'm coming from. If it's not useful speech, why say it? We have this tendency, we always want to fill up the silence with speech, and because often we don't have so much to say, then we will fill it with sampapalapa, useless speech, talking about the weather. We can get on to our favourite subjects of sports or football, but if someone else has a common interest in that, that's more polite conversation. Now the Buddha said we should warm up our talks with people. It's always important to say, how are you? Are you okay? Have you got it? His way was always, and it is for monks when guests come to the monastery, how are you? Have you had something to eat today? Have you got enough requisites? These kind of important questions. How was your journey here? Do you need anything? All of these things. A light conversation. This is okay. But just rambling on about this and that, politics, weather, is unnecessary sampapalapa. This is useful, helpful speech. And finally, experiential. There's not one good word. I was trying to think of one word to sum up. It has to come from a place of good intention yourself. There's no good telling someone they should do something this way if you don't do it that way. You must practice what you preach. That's the only way to put it, the fifth one. Practice what you preach. So, excuse me. Before you speak, it must be timely, truthful, kind, useful, and you must practice what you preach. That makes sense? Now, one tool, and this works, is a valuable tool. Before you ever say anything, before you speak, before you answer a question, breathe in, breathe out. Once is enough. It just slightly interrupts that reactionary speaking. Then you have chance, when you really know, timely, truthful, kind, useful, experiential, when you really get to know those, get the feel of those 5 things, everything you say will be more appropriate, or should be appropriate. Always in the back of your mind that how it's applied in the Noble Eightfold Path, that it must be, you must be refraining from harmful, lying, divisive. So obviously lying is obvious what it is, I've spoken about that, but divisive means gossip really. So if you say, this man said to that man about that lady this, and you're gossiping with a view to breaking something up, a group of people up, or even just changing some one individual's opinion of another's with information you're imparting, whether it be truthful or not. It's unnecessary. Let them draw their own opinions, unless you are doing them both a favour. So for the good of them both, well, this person was offended because you behaved this way, and but then you can say, but this person behaved this way because of that. And if you were putting it together that way, that's the opposite of whatever the opposite of divisive is. Cohesive, yeah, that's cohesive speech, is pulling them together. But divisive speech is putting people apart. Even if you only address it to one person, you're putting an intention in their mind. So we avoid divisive speech. Abusive speech, of course, that's, you're crap at this, as opposed to crap, crap Ajahn. It's, I can't think of another example. And then obviously practice what you preach. If you don't practice what you preach, people know. You know if someone's telling you something and you think, well, they don't do that, so why should I? We've all been there at work when our boss has said this or said that, or in situations. So where and how do we know this? Through that large content of speech which is not said, is not heard, body language. The part that is still said and heard, though, is tone. So even in this situation, I don't speak Thai, they do not speak English. It's impossible for us to have an argument, a conversation. But I could still very easily offend, and vice versa, without words, purely in mannerisms, in body language, in tone. Just, for instance, if someone was to hand me something and I was to just say, rather than crap, then, I've not said any words, but I've been deeply disrespectful of that person's kindness, and vice versa, without words. Now one could say, well, that's action, but it isn't, because it's to do with communication. So right speech, to avoid confusion, is about communication, as opposed to action, which is punching someone on the nose is very clearly action, and again a bad example, but to the point. So this is abusive speech. I think that's fairly self-evident. And then finally, what was the last one? Oh, idle, chitter-chatter. So in the view of Buddhist practice, it is also important to avoid sampapalapa. It's not just for monks. If you allow yourself to be with that silence, not in a necessarily or an unnecessarily uncomfortable way, always bearing in mind the overall principle of our practice is to do no harm. If you feel that you're in the presence of, say, someone whom is very uncomfortable with silence, then throw in some kind words. You can say, are you okay? Can I get you anything? How are you? How's your mother? How's your father? How's your daughter? This is okay. Fill the silence in that place. But of course, if you're with other Buddhists, us as monks, we'll go for days and not say a word to each other. A weird thing we do is, if you're in a large community, you'll leave. You won't say goodbye or even hello, apart from the formalities we go through with various people, the teachers that we do go and pay homage to, but not necessarily immediately you arrive. We not pay homage, pay our respects to. You go at an appropriate time, a timely time, to go and bow and introduce yourself or say you've returned, and you also go and beg to leave. But then the next day, after you've at the timely appropriate moment or time after the meal or something. Say on Tuesday, you're going to go Tuesday night, after the meal in the morning, you bow to the abbot and you say, I'll be making my way, leaving this afternoon or tomorrow, thank you. And we don't even say thank you, we just say that is it, you know. You ask for forgiveness, in fact. You say, Okasa Wandami Bhante, Dwarta Yena Katam Sabama Padadam Kamate Me Bhante. And he says, Kamate me, he always asks for forgiveness too. So anything I've done of body, speech and mind, please forgive me. Always you see anything, actions, this is karma, actions of body, speech and mind. Speech is right there, you see. Then that evening we go, we don't then, if we see them on the path, or even if we don't go to their kuti and say, right, I'm off now, bye. You don't. Even if you see them on the path, you just continue walking. No need to have that conversation again. No need to speak again about what's already been spoken. But of course in lay life, it's certain that would be a little impolite. So we have a little bit more thinking to do. And this is where it is, I understand the subscriber's question, all a little confusing. But breathe in, breathe out. Is it timely, truthful, kind, useful? Am I practicing what I preach? Not lying, not divisive, not abusive. What was the other one? 4. Avoid untruthful, divisive, abusive. Anyway, I've said it a minute ago, so my mind's going a bit blank now, which means this is warming up, overheating, as will be my phone. This phone is also suffering. It doesn't like the humidity, I think, is the problem. It, apart from the overheating problem, which is something entirely different, I'm now finding it difficulty charging it. So I think the lead might have got a little damp, where I've been putting it in a plastic bag to keep it dry and hanging it up the tree. But I think even the plastic bag, well, 2 plastic bags tied up tightly before I hang it right up the tree, I think the humidity gets in there, gets into the, so I might have to just keep it in the kuti, which is a slower, even slower way of uploading. Oh, I don't know. I've got my Kapia's going out. We're not going on our trip tomorrow to the eye hospital, but my Kapia's getting me another SIM card for, so I have another option, put it that way. I'll try that, and in a couple of weeks' time, we've changed the appointment for it's a long story. If all else fails, then I'll be able to go to a phone shop and try and get something else sorted out. But in the meantime, I'm going to struggle on. Even if I have to speak to you in the dark or use some other means, I'll let you know what's going on. But if for any reason I don't appear for a day or two and you're expecting me, don't panic. It's not the snakes. It's more likely to be that I've broken the phone somehow. Not that you'd panic anyway, I'm sure. But I wouldn't want to be missed for the wrong reasons. It'll be a technical issue, more likely than anything else. I hope that is enough on right speech. That clears up that thing. I do appreciate the different angle that you came up with that question. So for anyone who is hard of hearing or not able to speak for whatever reason, or if you're just in a foreign country where nobody speaks your language and you don't speak theirs, you can still practice right speech. It's about your mannerisms, your tone, your behavior in terms of that way of communicating. And it is very much about tone, and tone is directly affected by those the last of those 5 experiential. So coming from the right place, coming from you practicing what you preach. This is very much what applies to tone, but also intention, your intention behind what you say. And the way we can really be guarded on that tone is by effect, and very effectively, is simply by that tool. You know, you're not delaying an answer or delaying saying something. You're not delaying speaking. You're not delaying answering a question by breathing in once, breathing out before answering, before speaking. There's no delay. It's not noticeable. In fact, if anything, it conveys through your body language a better intention. Even that action in itself adjusts the tone, or the perception of the person you're addressing are more receptive. They know you're thinking about the answer. You know, when someone says, and they're like interrupting to get their point in, how does that feel? You just then want to back, and it's like this kind of conversation. Not a lot of words in what I was saying there, but I think you know what I mean. You're up against each other. Step back, breathe in. What will they be thinking? Oh, what's he going to say? He's thinking about that. Ah, that's good. He's making sure it's timely, it's truthful, it's kind, it's useful, and it's coming from the right place. Very important. So I hope I've said everything tonight timely and truthfully and kindly, and I hope it's useful. I hope it's coming from the right place, and in that it should be that I practice what I preach, albeit for me to be preaching. I'm not doing that, but I do try my very hardest to practice, keeping a lot more precepts than 5. But overall, even with our 227, it's still just one. Really, it's always just one. Do no harm to yourself or to other beings. And don't forget, that's the all-important thing. Yourself is just as important. You harm yourself, you are harming other beings. You harm yourself. If your mother's still alive, how is your mother going to feel? How's your father going to feel? How's your wife going to feel? Your husband, son, daughter, other people, about you harming yourself? How are you going to feel about you harming yourself? How's your mind going to feel about your thinking brain doing something without thinking that's going to physically harm your body? Your mind will not be soft and happy about that. It won't lead to wholesome mind states, only unwholesome mind states eventually. So be kind to yourself always. Like on the aeroplane, it always begins at home with yourself, because you cannot help anyone else. I'd say like on the aeroplane, because of the oxygen mask. You need to put your oxygen mask on first, as they always say in the announcement, before you try and help anyone else, even your baby. Of course the baby's helpless to put its oxygen mask on, but so will you be if you don't put yours on first. You understand the point. So we always begin this principle with you, number one, first. Then you can help others. So do no harm, and that's what it's all about. Thank you for watching, listening, and humidity and dampness allowing. I'll speak to you again very soon.